October 10th, beautiful sunny day in Gold Beach. We are having a special workshop today to discuss some issues here. Do I have any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Second, Chair Pash.
Further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, moving on to 3, projects. Discuss transfer of public health responsibilities from Curry Community Health to Curry County. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, as you're aware, the county has received a request to basically ask the county to take back the public health services that are currently being run by Curry Community Health. The proposal, Mr. Duque, who is I believe he's the CEO with CCH, did a PowerPoint presentation to us requesting that we take that program back. He has proposed that he would retain the behavioral health program, as well as Title V program and some reproductive health programs. I've been in contact with the state as to the cases that are being processed, the amount of staff that they believe can provide those services for our people. I've been in contact with somebody regarding how we could accommodate space needs, how we could enroll some of these programs into our other programs. So I think we're at the point where the board needs to discuss what they want to do with the proposal. I believe Mr. Duque, the contract with CCH actually goes until 2021. So we have the option, and legal counsel can chime in on this, but we have the option of just saying we want him to fulfill the contract, or discuss taking some of the program back or all of the program. We do have the state available to assist us by phone if we're here in about an hour. She couldn't help us at 9, but she said give her about an hour and she'd be able to chime in. So we have a lot of decisions to be made. I have given you copies of the materials that I've put together. Went through all the past contracts that we had with CCH. I'm sure Mr. Duque understood it took a while to get us to this point. These are the contracts to get us started. It took us a couple of years, so clearly to ask us to do something in just a couple months is almost impossible, I think, for the county.
On that note, Julie, I would like to show for the record, we have invited Mr. Duque and his attorney and Mr. Cannon, and the record reflect that none of them are here. It is only the board, Ms. Schmelzer, Council Huddle, JJ. So we have no representation from CCH here.
Right. I do want to say I did invite Mr. Duque, and he wrote back basically saying he would not be present without his attorney. That was on Friday, and the attorney got back to us on Tuesday saying that he would not be present. Mr. Cannon is the county public health administrator. He's actually a county employee. So I requested he be here, and he responded that he would not be here without Mr. Duque's basically approval. So you're right. We don't have anyone here representing CCH to talk about these issues. I just want to add that I also went through Council Huddle's office had pulled the contracts that we had to get this whole program started. So I went through and I also tallied up what the county actually gave CCH to get this whole process started. So we have that list of items that if the county decides to take all or a portion of this program back, we have to discuss how we address these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of assets that were given to CCH, because my advice to the board would be not to take anything back unless you're getting those assets back. So, and that's what I have. If you have questions on these documents, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, Council Huddle, do you have some direction or more information before the board starts discussing their options?
Sure. So it sounds like we've got a little bit of time before the state can join us. And also, just for the record, I received a correspondence from lawyer Julie Upton of Coos Bay, who's representing CCH, and she explained that they would need 10 days written notice before being able to attend any meeting. So they're requesting an actual notice in writing directed to them to attend a meeting with 10 days written notice. So that's what they've requested. I don't know if that's a good excuse for them not being here. The other correspondence I received from her is that Mr. Duquet's calendar was full today, and so he had a conflict, so couldn't make it. So that's just for the record. Otherwise, I think we have an executive session noticed on the agenda. The information that I would discuss would be the confidential attorney-client information regarding the contract rights and responsibilities and whatnot.
Is that part of it?
Yeah. So that's what I think we could adjourn to executive session, talk for close to an hour, and then we'd be ready to come out and talk to the OHA.
Well, before we do that, I would like to address some of these issues on transfer because, you know, I've spoken at length with Ms. Schmelzer on this issue, and you know, I think it's within the county's wherewithal to take it all back. If we look to do this rather than take part of it back, I think the county might be in a better place to take the entire thing back. I know the contracts are good through 21, and it seems that CCH wants to rid themselves of this of part of it as quickly as possible. I do have some concerns on the properties and things that were given to them initially to get them started. And I understand that some of this might have even been sold. There was a property that potentially or was possibly burned. And I'd like this board to consider as well getting an exact accounting of exactly where everything is, what's happened to this list in the last few years, that perhaps if Mr. Duquet and his attorney can get here with a 10-day notice, they can have that, you know, we can send them a letter asking them for a list, an answer to this list of where everything is and what is still owned, what was traded, what was, you know, what is still viable in this list, so that we can make a better decision on the assets that CCH currently holds for transfer back to the county, should we decide to take it all back. I also did some research on like counties and their general fund expenditures on this that we can talk about with the state. But for public health and investment for like counties, excuse me, there are 6 like counties, and the investment that was made into public health from general fund on most of these that are very successful is not what I expected. It's actually much smaller than I expected. So we can talk about that further as well. So with nothing further, any of the commissioners have any? Yes. Commissioner Boyce.
Disclaimer, yes, I'm on the Curry Community Health Board, but my comments are going to be based on what is best for the citizens and separate from my responsibility on that board. And just to offer the Board of Commissioners here that we find ourselves in another legal challenge, and I think this could have been avoided. I'm not here to point fingers, but probably I know Curry Community Health and the direction they've gone, the successes they've had better than anybody on this board, and should know. But just the fact to let the public know that I am really disappointed that the steps that we've taken have brought us to the position we're in another legal battle, and it puts us in a really tough spot, and it's a sad time for Curry County. I don't know if there's any possible way that we can rewind and extend of Olive Branch, because that's what's in the best interest of the finances, certainly the interest of the citizens, and for us to consider taking on any emphasis on the property, I think is wise, but not to the extent that it clouds in any potential way our judgment for the successes that Curry Community Health has had and the benefit that has been to our citizens and certainly to the county and our responsibilities. I am so sorry.
Would you do me a favor, Commissioner, and expound on in the initial part of your conversation, on the initial part of the conversation, you said that there, here we are in the midst of another legal battle, and we could have done
Potential, don't you think?
Yes, but what could we have done? What didn't we do to?
I think we made some assumptions on Curry Community Health that were unrealistic, and I think, as I mentioned to the board before, and we asked CEO Duque to leave the other day and not be involved in some of the discussions. I think that put him in a bad position, and I think there's some evidence that we made some assumptions about cherry picking this or that as far as the property goes or the responsibilities they have, and so there's been hard feelings, and I tried to avoid that. I tried to warn the board. We don't have to go down that path. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the right path. To answer your question, I believe that we mishandled this, and now we are looking at ways to bring the county into position to go back to, as I understand, the potential here, the possibility of taking over all of the health, behavioral health, public health, all the above, and I think that is something we are not prepared to handle at this time. And I don't think, as Ms. Director Smelser just mentioned, we need a year to prepare for that if that's really the route we want to consider. I'll conclude with this. If there's a way that we can back off this and try and, yes, I'm disappointed that Ben Cannon's not here, especially as a county employee, but he also has a lot he could contribute. So the challenge to this board is rewind just a little bit, sit down with cool heads, and get this out of a potential court case.
Commissioner?
I don't think it necessarily has to be a court case. I think Mr. Duque made himself very clear that he wasn't interested in keeping at least a portion of it, and we have to be frank and honest and do what we need to do in order to make this work, whether it's us taking it or whatever, but we need to look at all the facts before we proceed, and I appreciate Julie going back and doing some research, because that's going to help us in our decision, I think.
And Commissioner?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Duque made that statement, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he made that statement prior to seeking legal counsel or obtaining legal counsel. So something happened from the time he made that statement, from the time he offered to have a 3 or 4 month transition in his program to where we are now. That is the time sequence that I recall. Could also be wrong on that, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think from what the state told us when they were here, I think it's not likely that we can do this transfer in a couple of months, and I think that's going to be that could be a legal issue, because at a minimum, I think CCH would be held to a portion of the contract and to allow us to get up to speed. As far as that olive branch, and I'm not going to go into the particulars of the conversation, but Mr. Duque started this conversation with me back in April or May. I'm not sure exactly when it was. I didn't look back this morning. But he made an inference to me several months ago that he wanted us to take it all back. He wanted to give us all the real estate back. He wanted to give us almost $500,000 into the general fund. Please take it back. We just want out of it. It's become too much minutia with the paperwork and the regulations. We want out of it all. I want you to take it back. I didn't hear another thing for a few months. Then about a month ago, he came in here and said, no, now we're going to only give you part of it back. We're going to keep this much of it because that's what the board decided to do. I understand Mr. Duque is the CEO of a company. He's got to run his business. I mean, it's healthcare is healthcare, but it's also a business, and it's got to be a viable, at least break even or profitable business. I know it's a nonprofit, but you have to run in the black or right on that line. So I understand that he's got to look at the whole picture, but to go from take it all back, take the real estate back, the cars, everything, and the cash, to where we are now with no clear explanation and no timeline to work that out, for me, was a little bit of, for lack of a better word, a slap in the face. I'm completely open to having a conversation with CCH, and I'm completely open to extending an olive branch to them. Absolutely. But when I'm told one thing 1 month and 2 months later, I'm told something completely different, it's a little bit concerning for me. Commissioner Gold?
I had that same conversation with Mr. Duque, him offering that, and then, as I recall, he came to a board meeting and offered us, I believe, 3 options. And at that time, I said, well, which option does your board want? And it ended up, it wasn't option 1, which was the option that was presented to us individually. I don't know whether he talked to Commissioner Boyce or not, but it sounds to me like it was pretty much the same conversation with Commissioner Pash and myself, so.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm really surprised in any public presentations that Mr. Duque or any of his staff have had, I've never witnessed him make that as an option, of taking the whole thing back. I did comment, and I'm not disputing that he came into your offices individually and said, you can take the whole thing back. What I can say, and I can't reveal anything from a Curry Community Health Board except what's way back in the past, and I've never heard any board member, or has it, to my knowledge, been on an agenda, a recommendation as a viable option. To the contrary. So for what that's worth to this board, in the interest of healing, moving forward, protecting the interests of the citizens, and maintaining this whole program, if he came in and said, hey, as one of the 3 options, take the whole thing back, I don't believe that that was a representative of what he really recommended was best for the citizens of the county and what he wanted to do for this company. If I missed that, I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Our conversation was at length. I mean, it wasn't a 3-minute passing comment. It was a sit-down meeting at length. So I took it quite seriously that he was serious. Commissioner Gold?
Maybe I'm getting a little old, but I remember seeing the option 1, 2, and 3 up on the board. Option 1 was that we take the whole thing back. Now, I know I've got white hair, but I don't think the brain's gone yet. So.
Okay, I could be wrong on that, and I appreciate that, but was that do you think that was presented in the interest of a viable and recommended option?
Well, he told us in that meeting that those were the recommendations that he gave the board, if I recall. I'm not 100% sure on that, but as I recall, those are the recommendations he gave the board, and the board voted for option 2, not option 3. But what I'm saying is, when he came in my office and had that meeting with me, there wasn't 3 options. It was only 1 option, and that is take it all back. We want nothing to do with this anymore.
What instigated that? Do you recall? Not to put you on the spot here, but
Came to the office one day and knocked on my door. There was no prearranged meeting. There was nothing.
do you believe that was a preference he wanted at that point in time, and you didn't respond the way he would?
I really don't want to go into because we're in a public. Well, I just don't want to go into the entire conversation. In this, I would later, but
fair enough.
I do believe that he was serious, and it.
Okay, but
I thought when he came to me, I thought that he had the approval of his board to say that.
Okay, I don't think there's any of us here that believe that really was his preference 6 months ago or 6 days ago.
Okay.
Is that fair to say?
I believe it was his preference. When he came to me and sat in my office, I'm a pretty good listener, and he was very serious.
Why would he come to two of us and say the same thing if he weren't serious?
Well, if
my
he
question.
had issues, and he came to the two of you, didn't come to me, then why didn't we respond way ahead of time so we could avoid the situation we're in right now? Because apparently we didn't take him serious. We didn't respond. These are the consequences.
Commissioner? Yes, Julie.
Did you get the same visit?
So I was part of a meeting with that Mr. Duque had requested. So Mr. Duque had, I believe he had also talked about it in his quarterly report. And then he did request a meeting, and Commissioner Pash and I actually met in here with Ken, and I think it was his accountant.
Yes.
Because they were talking about the employees and what's involved with taking back the employees. And it sounded like he wanted us to definitely, the proposal was to take it back.
And that was, I hadn't even gotten to that part yet.
Okay.
The first meeting was a private meeting with he and I in my office. The second meeting was with Ms. Schmelzer and I, and here with him and his accountant. I believe that's who she was.
I think it was the accountant.
And that's what it was. It was the employees, how we would get them, fold them back into the county. I mean, it was at that level. They were literally talking about how can we bring the employees into the county with the payroll differences between a county employee and the CCH employees, and
Yes.
how can we make that work? So that was a secondary meeting, which confirms the first meeting was serious.
That was good.
He indicated to me about the employees coming back and salary ranges. We didn't get into the nuts and bolts, which it sounds like you did with his
Yes.
accountant, but he did mention those things.
Yes, that was a public meeting, but that was to bring the employees under the Curry County employment system, not to collapse CCH as it exists.
This wasn't a public meeting. It was a private meeting with Ms. Schmelzer, myself, Ken Duque, and his accountant.
Okay, but that all became public, though, as far as how that could possibly benefit the citizens and the public health program, the entire health program, and the CCH employees, bringing them under, but not doing away with Curry Community Health and the county subsequently taking over everything. So my focus here, Mr. Chair, is where do we go from here today? Questions? Do you believe, I know you don't have to answer, either one of you answer these now, but I think the obvious question is the county capable of doing that? Is that the second question, is that the best thing for the citizens? You know, I asked the board, in addition, can we ask CCH for additional time in this transition? You may recall, going to maybe to March or something, so.
I think by law they're going to be required to, because from what I understand from the state, it takes, if we were to give this all to the state, they can't take it for 120 days, I think it was.
And the state doesn't want it.
So I think they would be required by law to do that. But I'm not going to speak on their legal aspect. That's for Council Huddle and their attorneys to work out. I have had lengthy conversations with some people in the county and out of the county about if we do take this all back, and we could be possibly prepared to take it all back. Yes, there are some steps being put in place right now to take the entire thing back and do the citizens of this county justice with good service.
I just want to add to on the comment about the state. So when we discussed it with the state has taken it back for one county, but when the state takes it back, the citizens, this board actually, when they discussed it with the state, we felt that it wasn't in the best interest of the citizens that it be taken back by the state. We would prefer local caregivers and making sure those people don't have to wait for the services.
Indeed.
Well, I would like to commend the board, everyone on this bench, for the transparency we're offering, and I think the hearts truly are to figure this thing out and do the right thing. And I don't know, I just soon keep it all out in the public. I don't know if legally we can do that. But that's essentially, Mr. Chair, all I have to add at this point in time. Just a little sad. I don't mind dealing with controversy and issues, and especially this important, but yeah, it's all been said. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? All right, at this time, we're going to adjourn this meeting, go into executive session to discuss some legal aspects of this. Let me, ORS 192.6602F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. ORS 192.6602H, to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. So when we are finished with executive session, we will come back into session here. We are adjourned. And we are back in session. After meeting in executive session, the board is to proceed as directed from executive session. And with nothing further, this special meeting is adjourned.